afternoon. So, I became an adult during the recession of the 1990s, at a time when many people in my community lost their job, and when my father lost his work in IT. He was a contractor. He got no notice, no severance, and no opportunity to transition to his next no time to transition to his next opportunity. Shortly before that, my grandfather, pictured there in his garden, had retired after 35 years of working at the same company, essentially since he'd immigrated to Canada with his young family. And at the time that he retired, I was a teenager, and I vividly remember the gift they gave him, a clock. That's the clock there. Has my initials on it too. We shared the J. And it struck me as ironic that after 35 years of working at a company, at a time when he no longer needed a clock anymore, he was given a clock upon his retirement. So those events, the recession, other things happening in the world around me, formed my view that businesses maybe weren't so good. I actually remember talking to a university colleague who was studying business, and I was like, well, but business is evil. I truly believed that. And so I studied anthropology and political science. I sought fulfillment in the not-for-profit sector, and I dismissed business as a way to go about the world. So then I started my career, and I was working in nonprofits. And somehow, I was training women and giving loans for businesses in Ottawa and in West Africa. It didn't make a lot of sense. But as I was doing this, and I was helping women to have businesses that supported their families and their communities and contribute to society in a way that was meaningful for them and got them out of violent situations, I started to ask myself, maybe my thinking is wrong. And then one day, I found an ad for Equal Exchange Coffee Company. Equal Exchange is a fair trade, worker-owned cooperative based out of Boston. All of the people that work at Equal Exchange were owners of the business. They contributed to the strategic propositions of the company. They valued small-scale farmers in the global south. They valued organic and fair trade agriculture, and they benefited from the profits of the company. And then I really asked myself, can who owns the business change everything? So I came back to Canada, and I was looking for work that was meaningful and had an impact, and I found a sister company to Equal Exchange right here in Ottawa. Some of you may know La Siembra Cooperative. La Siembra are the creators of Camino chocolate. If you haven't tried them, please do. Amazing chocolate. That's also fair trade and organic and sourced from small-scale producers in the global south. I became an owner of this co-op, and I worked there for 10 years. We've had employee-owned companies in Canada since the early 1900s. The first worker co-op is generally thought to be founded in Lévis, Quebec in 1900 by a community of working-class people who were struggling financially and who needed a different way through difficult times. The most widely recognized early employee-owned company is Friesens Corporation out of Altona, Manitoba. Friesen started as a newspaper operation and gradually graduated to being one of Canada's North America's leading printers. They have over 600 employee owners, and they attribute their success to having their employees own their business. During my 10 years at La Siembra, I learned what it took to successfully navigate employee ownership: shared purpose, clear communication, good governance. And during my time there, I saw a commitment to work that was unparalleled in anywhere else I'd worked or where my friends were working. People came to work driven by a desire to contribute and a desire to collectively benefit from the work that we were doing on a daily basis. It was inspiring. And that example was just one of many, because research in employee ownership has showed time and time again that employee-owned companies, they outperform non-employee-owned companies. They have better productivity, they have 3 to 4 times the retention rates, and they have higher profits. But this statistic resonated most with me as a child of a recession. Employee-owned companies are 20% more likely to survive economic downturns. 20%. And so in a time when we have so much economic, political, and environmental uncertainty, do we not want to have more employee owners in our businesses? I think we do. So, speaking of recession, I was the CEO of that worker-owned cooperative in 2008, theme of my life. And pretty much overnight, we lost $300,000 because the Canadian dollar devalued versus the US dollar basically overnight. In addition to that, our customers had stopped purchasing and the economy was quickly grinding to a halt. We knew we had to change course. We knew we had to stem the losses, and we also knew we were in it ensemble, or together. And so we didn't just lay people off. We had conversations. We had many conversations to figure out how could we get through this hard time together. And so we created staggered work. We created part-time work. We figured out how to keep the business running and keep people's personal financial situations afloat while getting through a difficult time. And we got through it. It wasn't easy, but we did. I want to just draw a comparison for a second to something that is in all of our lives, right? We all own or rent cars or homes, places we live. And I want you to think for a second about how you treat your home or your car differently if you rent it versus if you own it. So imagine you rent a car, you get all the insurance coverages, all the damage waivers. As you're driving that car, you're not going to worry so much about what happens to it. But imagine if you bought that car, if you owned that car, if you'd put your own money and labor into that vehicle, would you not take better care? I can tell you my teenage son does. When he started, well, he's not a teenager anymore, when he started paying for his car. And so in my 20 years of experience in employee ownership, I see this over and over again. And the impacts are positive, and they're great outcomes. But it goes further than this. According to Statistics Canada, since the 1980s, Canada has seen increasing disparities in wealth across the country, to the point that now the richest 20% of Canadians hold 50% of the country's wealth. 20% of Canadians hold 50% of the country's wealth. And the bottom 20% hold 5%. If you work in a job in Canada, you get a salary and wages. You pay taxes on those. That's how most Canadians earn their living. The real median average wage for Canadians has steadily gone down since the 1980s. So much so that between 2020 and 2022, it went down by 5%. So those people, those wage earners, they're not keeping up. And at the same time, the richest Canadians earn most of their income from investment, dividend income, and properties that's actually taxed more efficiently than most labor income. And 1 in 10 Canadians currently live in poverty. 4.6 million Canadians. The majority of those are single-parent families, minorities, children. And at the same time, Canada has had the largest demographic of entrepreneurial baby boomers in history. We have the baby boom generation has been so entrepreneurial that 76% of small and medium-sized business owners say that they're going to transition their business in the coming 10 years. There are $2 trillion worth of assets that need to change hands from these business owners. So, what if we made those employees owners of those companies? What if instead of selling to private equity or foreign buyers, we sold those businesses to the employees, and we kept those businesses locally owned, and we allowed those employees to benefit from profits and their investment in the company? Would that not change things? I think it does. Just this year, the Canadian government introduced legislation that facilitates business owners to transition their business to their employees through a mechanism called the Employee Ownership Trust. The government recognizes we have all these businesses to transition, and we don't want to lose them to foreign buyers. If you're a business owner and you sell control to your employees, there are tax benefits to you for doing so, as opposed to selling to a third party. So, do you have a business you need to sell? Do you know someone who does? Are you an employee in a company where you're like, hey, could we do that? Maybe. I love the example out of Calgary, of Spartan Controls. Spartan Controls has been employee-owned since day one because the founders believed that everyone who worked for the company should benefit from their labor. Spartan Controls currently has 1,000 employees, and 96% of them are owners of the business. As a result, they're focused on the long-term view of the business, and they're not chasing short-term quarterly results. The ethos at Spartan is to make sure that the company is in a better place for the next generation of workers. And so they benefit from the profits, and they build a company for the long term. I think Spartan offers an amazing example of what can happen if we keep businesses employee-owned and locally rooted in Canada. So, we have an opportunity where businesses need to sell, and they need someone to sell them to, and where employees aren't making it make ends meet with just wages. So we could transition that, and we could find that match. I'm hopeful that with this opportunity ahead of us, we can facilitate that transfer of ownership for some of those companies and keep those businesses locally owned. And I don't actually know what my grandfather did at that company for 35 years. Sometimes when I would come home, he would come home from work and I would be visiting, he would come in and he never talked about work. He never told us what he did. And I can't help but wonder, if that company had have been employee-owned, would he have come home with a sense of pride? Would he have shared with us what he did at work every day? I don't know, but I have to believe he would have. Oh, and I also think maybe he would have gotten more than a clock on retirement. I can't change the past. I can only focus on the present and the future. So as we move forward together, let's think about how employee ownership can change the way our world works. Thank you.